handed out deal with action that can be taken by citizens, such as biking to work and things that we could do to prevent. What if we asked our corporate citizens to meet us halfway? Thank you.
Joanne Dooman, followed by Timothy Ruggiero.
Good evening. I'm Joanne Dooman. I'm with the Arlington Conservation Council, an organization with 41 years of activism here in Arlington trying to protect our natural resources. I want to thank you for having this hearing in Arlington so that a lot of us from North Texas could come and visit with you and meet. I'm meeting all of you for the first time. And also for having it in the evening. I know you said you have to drive back to Austin tonight, and I do appreciate the effort. I'll just make one point. There was an independent university study that estimated, and I understand TCEQ's own consultant confirmed, that the pollution from diesel-powered equipment used for natural gas drilling in the Barnett Shale in our area equals the pollution emissions from automobiles. We ask you to regulate the equipment emissions and require to the maximum extent possible electrical engines for gas drilling, compressing, and other exploration and production activities. Please ensure that your model captures the effects of the existing and projected increase in gas drilling in our area. Thank you.
Ruggiero will be followed by Carrie Kimberlin.
When Aruba Petroleum drilled 2 wells on our property last September, they used 3 450 horsepower diesel generators, 2 of which were running simultaneously at least 1,600 RPMs for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 60 days straight, blasting us with massive amounts of nitrogen oxide. We filed a complaint with the TCEQ, and the TCEQ determined that in one Screen 3 modeling in a 60-day time frame, we are being exposed to 380 parts per billion of NOx an hour. The National Ambient Air Quality Standard states that we should be exposed to no more than 53 parts per billion in a year. Unless my math is wrong, my family and I were exposed to 10,000 years worth of nitrogen oxide in 2 months. The indoor air sample that we conducted in our home, inside our home, showed that we had diesel exhaust within our own home. Our neighbor suggested that the cause might be my diesel-powered food processor. Since the TCEQ neither has the authority or the apparent desire to regulate NOx, they can only make a recommendation to Aruba Petroleum to install filters on the diesel generators. Aruba Petroleum's response to the recommendation was to state that the rig would be down in a week, which it was, and then they moved it a mile down the road and started exposing other families to massive amounts of NOx. They have just recently installed 2 more drilling rigs, side by side no less than a quarter of a mile from our home. Judging by the large black clouds of exhaust, they didn't follow your recommendation. The good neighbor voluntary compliance obviously does not work. While the TCEQ seems to work largely off of odor-based complaints, when we filed an online complaint citing frequent propane, butane, methane, and other emissions, the TCEQ did cite the operator for emissions and permitting violations. The operator decided to install an internal flare, so the raw gas they were just pumping out is now being burned. This flare produces large amounts of carbon dioxide and monoxide, and who knows what else, since there has been zero inspection or follow-up on the part of the TCEQ. I can tell you that within 4 hours of this unit going online, our immediate neighbor and her daughter came down with a rash. Her child got a nosebleed, one of their animals died, and one of the dogs became sick. Within several days of this, one of our dogs had a seizure. My wife sent a video of the flare, which had a visible fire and dark black smoke, out to the manufacturer, asking if this was how the flare was supposed to work, and if they believed that this flare should be this close to a home. Within a few days, workmen were out seen adjusting the flare, and they worked on it until it no longer produced the fire and the black smoke. I don't think, the problem is that it still puts out the emissions, but most of which we cannot smell. I don't think the fact that we can no longer smell the emissions is lost on the operator. See, we fixed it, I imagine the operator said. We would like you to reconsider the $32,500 fine. Aruba CFO and likely the CEO met with John Sadler on March 16th in Austin. Incidentally, during the same time frame, Aruba's condensate tanks overflowed for more than 12 hours. The TCEQ did not take an air sample, but FLIR video showed emission leaks from the same sources identified in the TCEQ investigation conducted on January 17th. The air sample taken on the 17th revealed 59 parts per billion of benzene. 60 days later, these emissions have not been corrected. I have the letter from Aruba that says they met with Sadler in Austin, but no word on where the investigation or the enforcement action stands. Once again, the operator gets to meet with the TCEQ to smooth things over, and we, the affected homeowners, wouldn't have known the meeting had even taken place if we hadn't filed a public information request. People are inspected for emissions by placing the emission sensor directly into the exhaust. The TCEQ tests for emissions from at least 30 feet away from the exhaust, if not hundreds of yards away. God forbid the TCEQ should determine the actual content and concentration levels of the emission from the drill rigs, condensate tanks, and wellheads. The TCEQ simply has no teeth. The TCEQ is supposed to be the guard dogs, not the lap dogs of the industry. Yes. TCEQ is not present, and they are not on the job. And lastly, the TCEQ is not fooling anyone with the elimination of the ESLs replacing by AMCV. The TCEQ has lied to the public and withheld information before regarding emissions. The TCEQ knows that the benzene levels alone are increasing, and they have apparently given in to the pressure of the industry to change their measuring stick. Can we please have the science that this of the AMCV is based on, or do we need to file a public information request on that too?
I'm not thrilled to be here tonight. I prefer to limit my driving on days when the air quality is so poor. For those of us who care about air quality need to be heard. I'm also here for the people who would never come to something like this. For example, there's a woman I love very much who loves to ride her bicycle. She deserves clean air to breathe. My boss Cassie loves to run after she leaves work every night, and she needs clean air to breathe. And I have two of the cutest dogs on the planet, Buddy and Claire, who love to drag me around the neighborhood, and they deserve clean air to breathe. You have forgotten the Marshes, the Cathys, the Buddies, and Claires of our communities. As the agency that is supposed to care for the environment in Texas, you have failed us miserably. I have watched you rubber stamp all sorts of horrible things for industry at the expense of our environment. I heard TCEQ representatives defend burning whole tires in old wet cement kilns with virtually no environmental controls. At that same meeting in Midlothian, I heard TCEQ representatives tell us that burning whole tires would help our environment. The poor air quality affects the children and the senior citizens the most, some of our most vulnerable citizens. Industry must no longer be accommodated at the expense of our health. Industries must make huge changes.